I hear people say all the time that they have a brown thumb and that they just don't know how to keep plants alive. Well, I'm here to tell you, you don't have a brown thumb, you just have no clue what you're doing yet. So in today's video, I'm going to share with you how to fix your brown thumb and how to actually be a successful gardener. Let's go. Hey guys, welcome back to Mini Urban Farm, a channel about gardening and homesteading in the suburbs. My name is Veronica and I help people to grow a garden and homestead in the suburbs, in the city, in an urban environment, in small spaces, all of that. So before we jump into the video, I am so excited to share with you guys to announce that I actually wrote a workbook. I created this workbook called Starting Your Urban Vegetable Garden. I will leave a pop-up here somewhere on the screen, and it is actually a 46-page workbook showing you how to create a garden from scratch, how to design your garden layout, how to pick the right plants for where you live, how to grow successfully, tips for maximizing your space in a small setting, all of that. So as of today, May 7th, it is on pre-sale, meaning that it is going to be 50% off for the next week. We officially go live with the workbook on May 14th, 2022. So you have 1 week to get it on that discount, 50% off before it goes live. If you are interested, if you want to know more about it, I will leave the link in the description where you can find out all of the details. Now, let's jump into how to fix your brown thumb. Now, a lot of times what happens is people start their garden and then they end up with things that look like this. Crispy, fried up little seedlings, which is definitely not what you want. You want something that looks like this. Nice, green, healthy plants filled with flowers and tons of vegetables to come. And there are a few reasons for your brown thumb. Let's start out with the most important one, is that you don't know what hardiness zone you're in and you don't know which are the right plants to buy for your hardiness zone. For example, I am in Central Florida, which means I'm in zone 9B. Now, we cannot grow things like pears and we cannot grow lettuce in the heat of the summer when it's 100 degrees outside unless we have other things going for us, like some shade cloth or a really shady spot or a different way to grow those things. Now, if I take those same little lettuce transplants from the garden center and I stick them in my 100-degree weather outside garden, it is not going to do well. And if you don't know that information, then it is not your fault if your plants die. The garden center is selling you something that they know doesn't grow here. But why do they do it? Well, they know it's going to sell, and they know what will attract more customers to come in. And then when that pear tree doesn't grow any pears, or the lettuce dies, or whatever it is, the gardener thinks it's their fault, but it's really not. Alright, you have to grow things that are good for your hardiness zone. What you want to do is search for your zip code and hardiness zone, and it'll pretty much just give you what hardiness zone you're in. If I do that, I come up with zone 9B. From there, I can search for plants that I know will do well in the hot summers that we have, or in the mild winters. We don't really get a lot of snow here in Central Florida, so I'm not going to grow things that do well in that kind of environment. Growing the right plants for the place that you're in is the #1 biggest mistake I see new gardeners make across the board. Alright, so the next biggest thing that I see new gardeners doing that 100% will kill your plants is growing things like this. Here, this is some kale and arugula, and we have some mustard greens. These things do really well in the shade, right? Yeah, they need some sun, but you don't want tons of sun on salad greens because it will literally fry your plants. And the same thing is true over here with my tomatoes. These are my Roma tomatoes, and if I put them in a very shady spot in my garden, then they were not going to do really well. I put them here because normally, when it's not sunset, alright, normally you get a lot of sun in this little space. So I found the very sunniest space in my entire garden to put my tomatoes and my beans and things that do really well in the sun. Another thing that I see people doing all of the time, and it's completely wrong, is putting something like this, right, a tiny little plant, into a bigger pot without any drainage holes, which means that when the water comes out of these drainage holes here at the bottom, right, as it's supposed to do, then it collects in this pile, in this puddle of water in that other bin, and that water is not going anywhere. That water will create root rot for this plant, and then the entire plant dies. So repeat after me. My plants need drainage, alright? Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Yes, you can grow things in the ground and that will naturally disperse into the ground and that will provide enough drainage. But do not put potted plants with drainage holes inside of another bigger pot that has no drainage holes. If you're doing that, you're going to need to change out that water on a consistent basis or dump out that water so that the plant is not sitting in standing water. Don't do this if you want to prevent root rot. Now, another thing that I see people doing all of the time, and I'm going to use this exact same example, is not giving the plant enough space. Now, this is a papaya tree. They grow pretty large. it will not grow in this kind of container. If you leave it in this little red solo cup for the entirety of its life, this is going to die. It's not going to do well, and there's just no space because the tree, the plant, whatever it is, wants to grow. And unless you have the appropriate size pot or raised bed or in-ground or whatever it is, unless you have the right amount of space for that plant, your plant will not thrive. So from now on, when you get a new plant, right, whether it's a papaya tree or a tomato pot or whatever it is, when you get a new plant of any sort, make sure you look up the spacing requirements. Know that tomatoes require 1 square foot in order to survive. If you put 20 tomato plants in 1 square foot, it is not going to give you tomatoes. The same thing as if I were to leave this little papaya seedling in this pot. I will not be getting any papayas if I leave it here. Transplant them out and pot them up to make sure they have the right amount of space for the plant type. Alright, so for the next one, I have a great example of what I want to show you for the point that I'm trying to make. This is one of my cute little cucumber plants, alright, and it has come down with some leaf miner damage. Alright, you can see this is clearly leaf miners. There's little lines going through the entirety of the leaves, alright, and it has it on a whole bunch of the plants. Alright, the number one thing that will kill your plant in no time flat is pest. Even if you're watering properly, even if they have the amount of space that they need, the light, all of that stuff, if you are not taking care of signs of pest and disease like this, when you first see it, this leaf miner will eat this leaf, it will eat that leaf, that one, that one, that one, and all the way up until it kills the entire plant and you have no cucumbers to speak of. So when you first start noticing signs of these pests and disease, alright, in your garden, the first thing you need to do is look up whatever it is that you're seeing on your plants. If that's white little lines on leaves of your plants, if that's yellow leaves, brown leaves, whatever it is, make sure that you look up what it is and find the remedy for it. Because if you don't fix it at the beginning, then you are not going to have plants after that. Alright, so the next thing I want to talk to you about is hardening off your seedlings. Now, these are some little seedlings here that I have from previous seasons, some parsley that I took out of the garden. Some of them you can see did not make it, but you can see a whole bunch of seedlings here. Now, I don't really have to harden off my plants because we are in Florida and we don't really get too much cold weather here. But when you do have a place where you are taking little seedlings like this out of a heated space, right, if that's inside your house or the greenhouse or whatever it is, if you're taking these little seedlings and you are planting them directly into the garden, they are not going to survive because you need to harden off your seedlings before you put them in the garden like this, all right? And just to be clear, I'm only talking about little seedlings that you grow from seed or you get at the garden store or whatever it is, all right? If you're planting direct, like I planted these beans out into the soil directly, you don't need to harden them off, all right? But if you do have things like this that need to be going into the garden, you have to harden them off. And what that means is you have to take them out of the heated space or whatever it is and leave them in some sort of central space, all right, whether that is a potting bench or whatever it is, for a couple of hours every day until they get to the full 8 hours, 12 hours, 24 hours, whatever it is. So start off with leaving them outside, just put them here for 15 minutes and then an hour and then 3 hours or whatever it is so that they can get used to the outdoor space. All right, they have to adjust to their new environment, and if you're not doing that, then no matter how healthy these little seedlings are, they won't survive once they get into their new space. So really, the fastest way to having a green thumb is to find a plant, look up what it needs, and give it what it needs. It's that simple, all right? Whether that be the amount of drainage it needs, the amount of sun it needs, the amount of water that it takes to keep that plant alive, all right? Anything that that plant needs is what you should be giving it. If you do that, I promise you, you will have a green thumb, all right, instead of your brown thumb. That is all it takes. So if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, download my free gardening checklist below in the description, and check out my Starting Your Urban Vegetable Garden workbook on pre-sale until May 14th. I will see you in the next one. Bye.